This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome to Island Treasures, a place for caregivers to hear encouragement from other caregivers who, by sharing their experiences, offer helpful information and resources for your caregiving journey. This podcast is brought to you by Alongside Caregiver Consulting, and I'm your host and caregiver consultant, Alison Van Schie from beautiful Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada. My guest today combines her analytical and problem-solving skills as a producer with her lived experience as a caregiver. From a very young age, she learned the importance of taking caregiving seriously, caring first for her grandfather and grandmother in different capacities at different times in her life. Later on, for 7 or 8 years, she was the primary caregiver for her mom who had dementia. During these caregiving experiences, she faced many harsh realities that led her to creating innovative ideas, strategies, and finding resources which she shares so that other caregivers can be set up for success and don't have to go through some of the difficult challenges that she experienced. I'm sure you're ready to hear more, so join me now as I welcome Katrina Prescott. Welcome, Katrina. It's so wonderful to have you on the Island Treasures podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me. I feel so grateful to be here and to be connected with you, Alison.
And wasn't it fun the way that we were introduced to each other?
It was. It's a very small world, and Chris was very wise for making the connection.
Yeah, so Chris McClellan of the Whole Care Network made the introduction. He says, you two are neighbors. You have to meet.
We do. I wish we were closer neighbors.
Yeah.
It's been great getting to know you.
Yeah, you as well. And just full disclosure, I was a little intimidated by how he promoted you as a producer. And now here I learned that you are also a caregiver. So Katrina, would you like to share your caregiving story?
Well, I am a caregiver who's currently caregiving less, but I am actually still a caregiver. I was a caregiver to my mom most recently. She was 71 when she passed last year, and I was her full-time caregiver for about 7 or 8 years. And before that, to my grandmother. My mom was my grandmother's primary caregiver for about 25 years. And my grandma passed in 2013. She was 98.
Wow.
That was kind of the thing. She had things going on, but it was, she really lived a long time. And mom was different. Mom was a person living with dementia, and that came on pretty early for her. No one knew. I don't know if she knew for a long time. And before that, I was very young. I was a caregiver to my grandfather. My grandparents lived very close to my mom and I. And my grandfather went blind when I was maybe five or six. And I started caring for him. I obviously didn't do all the things because I was young, but I was part of the team with mom and grandma, and we cared for him. And it was something that I took a lot of pride in. But I didn't realize I was a caregiver at that age, but I loved him, and I was grateful to be able to care for him. hopefully inspire him a little bit. I know that losing his vision was very hard, very upsetting for him.
What a great introduction to caregiving. Not knowing that you were a caregiver at such a young age, but you came alongside your grandfather and you, I'm guessing, were his eyes for him.
Yeah, I was basically just going to say that I was definitely a set of eyes for him. And I sometimes now think about that. I wonder what that was like for him. He must have been in his 70s. Then he suddenly had the eyes of a 7-year-old or whatever guiding him.
Yeah. Seeing things with such curiosity and enthusiasm.
Yeah, no, just thinking back on that, it probably was kind of hilarious in some ways. And it was something I actually took very seriously. Um caring for him and my grandmother and even my mom in ways. I always wanted to make sure they were okay. And I guess that did start with me at a very young age.
Yeah, it was instilled in you. And with your mom being the primary caregiver for your grandma and then experiencing dementia herself, did the dementia start while she was caregiving? Or you said it was pretty gradual and you didn't realize that she had dementia?
Yeah, I was living in New York, so I wasn't in Vancouver with them all the time. My guess is that it did start when mom was caregiving for grandma. Um, because grandma would say things like, "There's something wrong with your mom,"
Oh.
which I found offensive because they had a slightly fraught relationship. So you don't take things at serious. It's well, maybe you're triggering her, things like that. Uh, but looking back, I mean, mom probably had some mental health issues and she was overweight for a long time and she did lose quite a lot of weight, like over 100 pounds.
Wow.
Like she lost so much weight and it seemed like she was getting healthier. So I was kind of surprised when this progressed. And it really did progress or fully take effect, maybe, after my grandma passed in 2013. Looking back, now I see that that loss must have been really hard for my mom. And my mom and I also, had our relationship challenges. So I probably didn't view it the same way I do now looking back at the time, but she was really upset when her mom died, when grandma died.
Mm-hmm.
She would say, all of my family's gone. And it was true. Her sister had passed and both of her parents. And even though I'm her child, it's different. Like I see that, I see that now as someone, if I'm fortunate enough to live long enough, will also experience that, to not have those people that witnessed you growing up and were there for you. That was very hard on her. But I definitely didn't realize how hard it was at the time.
Sometimes it really is helpful to be able to step back from the caregiving and have the moment to reflect. And you were not realizing things when you were full on in it with your mom and also with your mom from New York. You were able to look back now that your mom has passed and your grandma's passed, and you have more insights that you weren't able to see when you were in the moment.
Yeah, that's very accurate. And it kind of just floods in, and I'm so grateful that it does. I'm very grateful for those memories, and I can also see the value in those experiences now. I was never striving to be a caregiver.
Oh, yeah.
And now my life has been so much more enriched through caregiving. Um, I mean, it was very challenging at times, very, very challenging. And I wouldn't want a lot of those brutal challenges that I have. I wouldn't want that I did experience, especially through the medical system and those types of challenges. I wouldn't want anyone else to have to go through those types of challenges.
So let's talk about those. And that probably leads into what you're doing now. So let's talk about those challenges that you faced initially.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, grandma was one thing, and mom was mainly involved with that. And I was in and out, I was fluttering in and out from New York, and I'd come for a month at a time, but I wasn't really involving myself that much. And sometimes I would come in and assert myself in that, and it was also invasive and maybe not right, like maybe it undermined my mom a little bit. So I wasn't super involved with grandma, but at that time, I did hear all the time from her that there were a lot of challenges dealing with the system, but I didn't specifically know what they were. And because my grandmother, um, mostly her ailments were from aging, just, I mean, 98, that's
Yeah.
quite something. So, she had problems. I think she had like a really slow growing stomach cancer, and her spine was deteriorated. Like they were significant, but her memory was intact. The kind of care that she needed was very different and in many ways more available through the system, and more manageable. And I would maybe even say that it was better before when my grandma first started receiving those supports. So basically, long story short, when I began caring for mom, weird things started happening. And finally, we got a diagnosis, which was the most humiliating, degrading, unfortunate experience that I've ever witnessed well, is that true now after the whole medical system? Let me put it this way. It's a very terrible way to interact with people, the way that they do the diagnosis.
Can you kind of explain what happened when she received that diagnosis?
Well, they basically, they put mom in a room with a student and they gave her a test. I mean, people living with dementia don't like questions on a good day. No one likes a test. I don't.
Yeah.
And it just put so much pressure and anxiety on the person receiving the test. It just, no one's set up for success in that situation. And it doesn't really paint a clear picture. There could be a easy way of doing that version of a test through a conversation that is not demeaning. And yeah, it was really terrible. There was no friendliness. It was very cold, and this was done by one of the best, Jerry Sykes. It was shocking, and she was quite rude. And it just got worse from there. And I'm friendly. I'm nice. I'm not. I wasn't aggressive or angry. I was curious, and
So they were focused on your mom and they weren't really listening to what your concerns were. Is that what I'm getting?
well, I wouldn't say they were focused on either one of us. It was more like a factory. Okay, this is the test. We're going to do it. Okay, here's a diagnosis. Call the Alzheimer's Society. Bye bye. I mean, that's really what the experience was. So you do call the Alzheimer's Society, and I thought they were gonna like that was it. They were gonna lead us through the next steps and who helps us and send help into the home and give respite and do all these things and provide all the support because that's what it sounded like. And as people who have experienced this diagnosis, they know that's not quite the case. So, depending on your socioeconomic status, this can be very challenging or not. In our case, it was quite challenging to get help, to get respite. And the first respite that I started to get was 15 minutes a day, 4 days a week or something. What's the point? What was the point of that? And people living with dementia at different stages, it can be quite uncomfortable to have a stranger just walk into your home and kind of demand things or insert themselves out of the blue. And
Yeah.
that was very hard for my mom. So that's kind of where the issues with the system started. which was getting the help that we really needed. And it was near impossible to get that for several years.
I like that you said your mom got the diagnosis and you were told contact the Alzheimer's Society, and then you listed all of the things that you needed. You wanted them to come alongside and help guide you through all of the things that you now know are required when you are the caregiver for someone who has dementia. So you now are on the side where you can help others with that experience that you now have.
100%. And I do. And I really wouldn't want anyone to go through what we experienced with the system, right? It got worse and worse and worse. And so many things happened. Here's one example. So my mom would walk all the time. It was normal. She'd walk for hours a day. She loved it. And one day she went out for a walk as normal and didn't make it home. People living with dementia generally walk in straight lines. So she just kept going. We live in the west end of Vancouver near English Bay, and she made it out to Grandview Highway. There's like a Chevron station out there that someone spotted her at. So, and that was at 7 in the morning.
Oh,
She was gone a really long time. It was brutal. And for anyone that has ever had someone go missing in their lives, it's really horrible. There's no
because
sleep.
you don't know. You don't know where they are, what's going on, what's happening to them.
And I'm a yoga teacher. I meditate. I really couldn't get out of my mind in that. It was really, really hard. I didn't have my driver's license at the time. In fact, I was supposed to take my road test the next day, but I had friends out. We were scouring the city. It was really hard. So anyway, the cops brought her home. She walked in, she's like, "My legs hurt." Yeah. I bet, Mom. So my friend was there and she stayed with Mom and I slept for a few hours, and I think Mom probably passed out too. And then a couple weeks later it happened again. And there's no way of controlling this, right?
And there's no way of predicting it either.
No way of predicting it. And I can't just lock her in the house. And this time she was found an equal distance, but a different direction, and found by paramedics. It was pouring rain. They took her to the hospital, and that's really when things changed.
Mm-hmm.
So our case manager basically was trying to force Mom into long-term care. I think Mom was about 65 at the time, and that wasn't what was about to happen. Aside from that, she was kind of okay. There were other things going on, but the doctor even said, she won't live long in there because she's so active and energetic. They don't have the resources to care for someone like that. So she'll be heavily medicated. And, generally in long term care, people live for 12 to 6 to 18 months. People living with dementia, that's what the stat I was given from the hospital, 6 to 18 months. And most of that is from drugs often, or the change is so traumatic. There's lots of reasons. Anyhow, that wasn't what I wanted. And I knew I would be at the care home for 10, 12
All the
hours a
time.
day.
Yeah.
And why not be in the comfort of our own homes? It
Yeah.
just made more sense. I didn't want to fight with the nurses, worry about it. So it just felt easier for me to do it here. However, the case manager really fought us and was really trying to force her into long-term care. I did not have a representation agreement. I would highly recommend everybody have a Rep 7 in place.
And those are available in British Columbia.
Yeah, and they're not hard to do. In fact, I'm doing one today for someone I'm caring
Awesome.
for now. But I didn't have that, and they had certified Mom, so it was going to be very challenging. Long story short, the ethics board of the hospital got involved on our side. The doctor ended up following us in the community, and I was allowed to bring her home very conditionally.
Oh.
And if she went missing one more time, that was it. So that was kind of the beginning of the end for me in terms of sleep and the beginning of major, major stress. That whole period with the system was probably the most stressed I've ever been in my entire life. It was brutal. So I brought mom home, and I had a alarm on the door, so every time the door opened, it would call my phone, so I'd know if she'd opened the door. And then I had a camera in there that I didn't have on all the time, but I could use it to check in. And we basically, she wasn't really alone that much. She was pretty much attached to me from the moment she got home. And they only gave me 6 hours of home support a week.
Wow. So no wonder that was the stressful time.
Well, dealing with the hospital was really stressful. I didn't realize they could just take her away and do what they wanted and take control of her care. That was an eye opener for me. And I tell as many people as I can that, really get your rights in place, right? Having that rep agreement. A POA is about money, it's not
Right.
medical.
Yeah.
So it's really important for people to have these representation agreements and have everything in place, because the government felt she was unsafe, right? She was a threat to herself. That was that. They could just intervene. And that's why the ethics board of the hospital got involved and the doctor, because they knew that I would step up and do a good job. And they didn't agree with what the system was suggesting. So it was really stressful. It was really, really stressful. But yeah, I brought mom home. I set things up. I had 6 hours of break a week. I would try to sleep or shower or work, grocery, whatever. And we would basically just walk. We walked for 8 hours a day, some days. They tried to put her on different drugs, and the doctor didn't like that. So we used cannabis, which he also prescribed. And that was a game changer. That was a game changer. Yeah. So we had 6 hours of help. Okay. Getting that help was one thing, but having her accept the help was another. And my mom was young and energetic and feisty, and home support workers aren't necessarily well trained to interact with a person living with dementia, or necessarily want to. So it was very hard to make matches. A revolving door of home support workers really doesn't work for a person living with dementia. So there were a lot of barriers to even getting this 6 hours a week to work and to work well.
You raise a valid point, because if you've only got 6 hours and 5 of them are spent getting your mom to say, oh, this person's okay, I can sit with this person or walk with this person, but you really don't have much time left of that respite that you've been afforded. So yeah, valid point.
I broke it up into 3 2-hour blocks. Once I would get mom settled, I'd often even just go cry, have a cry. So, I mean, and this is the reality for so many people.
That's a reality that needs to be amplified, though, because we're not hearing that in discussions. It's okay, you get this many hours, you get this much help. Your loved one isn't going to accept the person that's providing the help. What do? That's eating away at the time allotted. And your reality is you need that time. You need that help. You need a break.
100%. And the person living with dementia, if they don't accept that help, is blamed. So that was a whole other stress ball. It was mom's fault. It was never the care aid. It was always, if your mom doesn't comply, we're going to take this help. So there was always a threat of the help being pulled. Or one woman who was particularly terrible, and mom I think she had a UTI or something was happening, but mom was acting out, as they say, because something was off, and the woman was going to call the police on my mom. And it was just like, why wouldn't you just call me? I'm
Yeah.
2 seconds away. So it was just, the help itself was totally inadequate. There were, of course, a few workers that were superstars, but you don't get those people all the time. And eventually, though, we did, because no one wanted to work with my mom because she was too challenging. That this is another point. We're not accounting for people with complex needs or complex dementia, right? Like the care support people are trained, none of them have heard of Teepa Snow. Not one.
So let's just remind folks of who Teepa Snow is.
I'll let you do it, but I'll just say I call her the dementia whisperer. But
Yeah. So Teepa Snow is an expert teacher in the positive approach to care, dementia care. So she's an occupational therapist, and she trains, and she has videos, free videos, resources. And if you want to know how to deal with specific behaviors, you can find Teepa Snow on YouTube. Just Google Teepa Snow, TEEPASNOW, to find out more. I think her approach and teachings are brilliant. I'd even say she's brilliant.
she is brilliant, and her tools for interaction are top notch. And I got more help from her videos than any medical professional that I've ever interacted. Most medical professionals don't even know to not ask a person living with dementia questions. It's 101. This is how people living with dementia just aren't set up for success. And if there's a caregiver, this also often rolls on to the caregiver. Oh, well, she can't answer any questions. So what do you want us to do? More times than not in the system, I was completely gobsmacked by. But anyhow, Teepa Snow.
No, that's probably a very accurate word to use. We were talking briefly about respite. Can you share about the respite through Hilarity for Charity?
Yes. So I was desperate for respite, and I wasn't getting enough. And private help is quite expensive. I used a mix of public and private, and I had one friend that really stepped in and helped. One of my best friends, she would come sleep over, or if I had to work, she would come. And then Hilarity for Charity was a big help. They have a granting program. You can apply for a respite grant through them. Hilarity for Charity is Seth Rogen and his wife, Lauren Miller Rogen. He's from Vancouver. I'm not sure if she is, but her mother was diagnosed, and to use the word again, they were both gobsmacked at how intense the needs were. So they started Hilarity for Charity to help other people. And they're doing a great job. And what do caregivers need? We need respite.
Right.
This is the number. We can't, take care of yourself first. If one more person said that to me, my intention was never to not take care of myself, because I wasn't set up for success to do that, because there was no support to do that. So, it becomes lip service. And anyhow, they they started this. So I applied. I think I got two or three grants from them. I probably got somewhere between 75 and 100 hours of respite grants for them. It really saved me a few times because I still had to work. And my days on set, as you mentioned, I'm a producer, so we're filming, and my days on set were quite long. Sometimes they were a 12-hour day, 15-hour day. I'd be gone, leave at 4 a.m. So I'd have some public. Then my friend could do this block hours, and then I could get Hilarity for Charity to come in from this to that. I mean, it was constant scheduling. They were great, though, and they're still giving out respite grants. Alzheimer's Society of BC did have something similar at one time, but they don't do that now. And they haven't, I think, for some time.
Is Hilarity for Charity available in Canada?
Hilarity for Charity is Yes, available in Canada and the US. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you introduced me to that.
They're great. I would recommend signing up for their newsletter. They do a lot of things. I get emails from them every week. I'm not sure how, maybe even a couple times a week. Anyway, yeah, they're great. Hilarity for Charity is great. Um, yeah, those respite grants really helped me. I'd love to see the Alzheimer's Society do something like that because, it's great if there's all these workshops and this and that, but you can't go if you
Yeah,
don't have
because you're,
respite.
yeah.
And a lot of these services are just made for a certain stage,
Right.
right? So as things progress, the limited resources really diminish. And this is also very true for early onset. It was very, very challenging to have mom participate or even go to adult day program. And it was a new, innovative one that seemed cool. You know, no one there was her age. And she just did
Mm,
not vibe with it. Mom really was vibrant and energetic, and she really wanted to be in service.
yeah. Yeah. Purpose.
Yeah, explore her purpose with her time here. And that really wasn't available. I had an idea of mom volunteering somewhere because I thought that could maybe work out. And it might have if I had gone, but I needed the respite. So I hired this one woman. She's amazing, caregiver. Her name's Miriam. And she tried to take mom to volunteer places, but it wasn't a fit. And I didn't really have time to explore a bunch of places. But if it had been a fit, I think it would have been great. I used to do a meal service in my neighborhood. I'd make two huge pots of food, put them in the trunk. My friend and myself and mom would drive around the neighborhood and hand out hot meals. Mom loved this, right? It lit her up. And it really taught me that there was just so much more there than what the medical system was projecting onto her. The medical system makes an assumption about people living with dementia, and it did not fit her at all.
No, it's really important, and that meal program that you were doing sounded really good and gave your mom purpose.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. And then we did eventually have to stop that when she couldn't walk any further,
Oh,
any longer. Like I couldn't get her in the car. I did lift her in and out of the car for a very long period of time.
that's tough.
And I got friends to do it, like many people in the building did it.
Oh,
Yeah, in and out. That was after a hip break. This was
mm.
another thing. They didn't want to give mom physio. Well, they would have given mom physio, but they wouldn't work with her schedule. It had to be their schedule. So she didn't get any physio. And looking back, if I could do that chunk all over again, I would because I just didn't see opportunities where they were. And I know that if those opportunities had been taken, I'm pretty sure that some outcomes would have been different. And, these are the things that I can now share with other people.
And help other people to advocate in a way that you weren't familiar with doing at that point.
Yeah, and find ways of getting resources and all these things. And it's really hard when you're exhausted and you can feel defeated. And the guilt, right? There's so much guilt in caregiving, and anything I can do to mitigate that for other people. I mean, the guilt that I felt after mom had a fall and her hip broke, that was really brutal. And not everyone needs to go through that, you know? No one needs to go through it.
There's the dignity of risk, though, and I hear you saying you were blaming yourself. You were guilty that your mom fell, but you can't protect every step she takes.
It wasn't just the fall, it was all the things, right? It was the whole experience of the fall, the medical system, the people. The anger I felt towards the medical system was so overwhelming. It really, really was. I don't know if I've ever felt that much anger in my life. I was so angry.
Have you reflected on that anger?
Well, in time, I mean, I did a lot of core energetics around it, which really helped process it. But, you know, what's under anger? Sadness, often, right?
Fear.
So disappointment. I mean, there was a lot there, and it was two things. At the time, it was this didn't need to happen, and then later it was the acceptance that it had. That's where hopefully people can land, because that is what's happened. We're here now.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
cannot change it. I have my feelings about it, journal, scream into pillows.
And that's my favorite venting.
Yeah, me too. I mean, go beat up some pillows, seriously, and get it out of your system, because really that being stuck in us, it further dampens our energy and exhausts us. Who knows if that's making us sick or how that's affecting us? And just getting that out and not at the carry is really important. But yeah, it did eventually turn into acceptance. And that didn't happen overnight.
Mm.
Um, there was a lot of nights where I would just, God, it makes me even tear up now to think about it, just cry myself to sleep through the anger and the disappointment and the sadness of what had happened there after the hip. Because it really changed everything. She basically went from functional to not, and she stopped talking and
Oh,
everything. So it was a huge loss and grief. It was brutal. It was brutal. And now looking back, I think she was in severe pain
mm.
that meds couldn't just do. I mean, she really did need really good physio and probably massage. She probably needed all these things, and it just, instead of talking, she was top of the lungs screaming 24/7.
Trying to communicate, trying her
Right.
best.
And then that was driving me crazy.
Yes, it
I
would.
couldn't fulfill my role in the ways that could have supported both of us more, because I was just gone out of my body. Like, I was just so exhausted. And yeah, it really didn't need to go like that. It really didn't. I accepted it, but I wouldn't want anyone else to go through that. And there's ways to manage that so it wouldn't. And that was a huge, God, I mean, I just feel like every 3 weeks there was something new and everything was massive. And just, I could see so much opportunity for innovation. Just a few 2-degree shifts here or there probably save the system billions of dollars.
Maybe, hey?
Oh, and make everybody's life so much easier. Bring joy and ease and love. And
And that's what you're doing now, right?
that's true.
So let's talk a little bit about your projects that you're heavily working on. So I don't know what you want to share first, but therapeutic fibbing, the video series, or do you have something else that you want to share?
Well, yeah, we could talk about therapeutic fibbing for sure. So therapeutic fibbing is a short episodic web series about a family navigating a diagnosis of dementia, and highlights what that's like for different members of the family. It's loosely based on my producing partner's family. My producing partner's mom is living with dementia, and it pulls in from different people's experiences. No, it's not just all based on her experiences, but different stories. And there's a lot of people that I know and that she knows, who are navigating this, and we hear a lot of stories. So these kind of get interwoven, or not even just stories, but interactions, just moments. There's a lot of moments in caregiving that are hilarious or poignant. So we weave those in. And our other partner, his mom was also living with dementia. I believe his mom was diagnosed when he was 28. So he was quite a young caregiver, and I feel like she didn't live very long.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so the three of us have been making the series, and we just released season 2, and it's doing quite well. I think we might hit 1 million views.
Well, it's very engaging and it's very entertaining.
I'm glad you feel that way.
And I love the way you freeze it and say opportunity. And here's the way you could handle it for a better outcome. And I just love that because you're not just highlighting the problem or the challenge, you are creating and providing a solution. So I find them very engaging and they're short. So that's what caregivers need. They need short and informative videos or
Yeah,
information.
100%. You can find it on storiesforcaregivers.com. It's also therapeutic fibbing on YouTube and Facebook. And I'm glad that you're enjoying it, Allison, and that it's resonating. That our hope is to really support people, and destigmatize. There's so much stigma, and that stigma is really preventing people from having full lives, caregivers and people living with dementia. It's very archaic, our mindset here in North America around dementia, and that it's really time for it to shift.
Your message about your mom, like she had so much more to offer and she wasn't being given the opportunity. And that's another message that comes through loud and clear with what you're saying today.
Yeah, she really wasn't. The medical system, the doctors, and everyone, it's just, you're really put into a box with that diagnosis. It was shocking. It was shocking and upsetting. And of course, there are doctors out there and medical professionals that are doing innovative work. So I'm speaking in my personal experience, my lived experience. But there really is an opportunity for so much to shift. And that goes for the resources that we're pointed towards. There's so much opportunity there. So much.
So let's talk about some of the other projects that you're working on.
Well, something that was really important to me was to share our story and our experience with anyone that could use it to make change, right? To help others. So I really lend any knowledge or wisdom or insight that I've gained in our lived experience to many different researchers, research groups, many different universities and schools. Um, and I will continue to do that because it's actually very hard for a lot of these researchers to find caregivers that can speak to it or have the time or just it's really hard for a lot of them to connect with caregivers. So anyone out there that is listening that is willing to do that, um, the Alzheimer's Society, Family Caregivers of BC, people often go to them for caregivers or for people living with dementia to participate in research. I highly recommend doing that because that's how change is made. One of the projects that I'm involved with measures lost productivity in work for caregivers. This is really important information to have. And I've been involved with them for several years now, and we're getting somewhere. And we've been written up in 2 medical journals. And this year, we're gathering the stats. We've got some money to really gather some bigger stats. We didn't get enough money, but we have some money. Any private funders listening, we're welcoming any funding. So that's one thing I'm involved with. I've also been a health mentor through UBC. They ask people with lived experience with the medical system, in the medical system, to mentor their medical students. So doctors,
Ah.
physio, OTs, SLPs, speech language pathologists, pharmacists, to share stories and experience so that people that are coming into these fields understand what it's like for the people who are receiving the care and it's quite impactful.
So, how do folks sign up for that? Because that's brilliant, because it is a necessary message. It's a necessary class or field of education that needs to be tacked on to folks who are studying.
Um, for people that are interested in becoming a health mentor through UBC, they would contact Jen McDonald at UBC. So that's jen.macdonald at ubc.ca for more information.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, so being a health mentor, and I also do that with pharmacy students. Pharmacists have saved my mom's life on more than one occasion. Um, Pharmacists are a great asset and they have a lot of information, and it can be different than doctors significantly. Most times, I would go to a doctor first and they wouldn't be able to work it out, and the pharmacist could just casually work it out quite quickly. So I flipped it and started going to the pharmacist first.
There is a podcast episode featuring Dr. Delon Canterbury, and it's called Pharmacists, the Best Kept Secret for Caregivers. And you're just affirming that.
I am 1,000,000,000% affirming that.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've done that, and hopefully I'll do that again this year.
Love that.
I'm involved with the Canadian Centre for Caregiving Excellence. The CCCE is doing really great work for caregivers. I'm a co-chair for the Caregivers Can group. I started a program before COVID called Close to Home. I live in a tower in the West End, and I was in the throes of caregiving with not enough respite, and gosh, and there's quite a few seniors in the building, and we have a building that a lot of the residents have known each other for a really long time or been here for a long time. It's kind of a special place and more community oriented. And I was so tired one day. Mom and I were coming home. We probably just walked for a million hours or something. And I was like, wouldn't someone just come and sit and watch TV with someone else is in a different box in this building watching TV? Can my mom go to that box, or can someone in that box come to our box? So that's kind of where it started. And then it grew into this program called Close to Home, where we did programming in the lobby. We have a big lobby. And a lot of people can't get to adult day program or even get dressed or get out of their house too easily. So doing programming in the lobby, will come down in your robe. I'll go get you if you're in a wheelchair and bring you down. So, there was sandwiches and snacks and bingo and a TED talk and this and that. So that was going very, very well. We'd have 40 people in the
Wow.
daytime. Yeah. So Close to Home really started going great. And then, of course, COVID.
So, can I get you to explain a little bit of the mechanics of how you got Close to Home started and financing? And because that sounds like another brilliant program.
Yeah. Close to Home is a good idea. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I am.
But
toot. So I told the ED at the time of Wesson, which is the West End Seniors Network, Anthony, who's amazing. I told him this idea, and he got the funding through Wesson, because Weston was really focused on accessing and connecting with isolated seniors. And he saw this as a great way to do that. And it was. So he got funding. I'm not sure exactly how much or where through. I don't know that I would have had the right to that information, but he got a woman in to run the program, and people loved it. People really, really loved it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to spread that word, because maybe we can get something like this, and maybe the listeners can connect with a senior support society somewhere and get this in their buildings and neighborhood centers.
I'm happy to consult with anybody that would want to do that. I'm happy to talk to anybody because I know how to do it. Weston is still doing it, but less after COVID. But I'm hoping that it'll pick up. I think it's in 2 or 3 buildings right now.
Wow. Good for
Yeah.
you. Yeah, good for you and good for the folks that it helped.
Yes. I mean, yeah, no, it's great. It's really easy to do things. It's just people often don't know how to start.
No, that's it. Yeah,
A-
that's it.
And that has been true for me as well. I've had many ideas that I haven't known how to start. And then I started this other program that is environmentally related, maybe back in 2013 or something. I was like, I'm just going to do it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to do it. And that kind of got me out of my fear. I don't know if it was fear, but it got me out of my I don't know how to do this. It didn't matter if it succeeded or failed. It was just an idea. Um, but yeah, if something is in alignment, it'll go.
Well, taking that first step, and if you lean as you're taking that first step, you have to move forward.
There you go. Lift up the leg and put it in front of the other one, even if
So, Katrina, how can folks reach you?
if people are interested in connecting with me and working with me for caregiving consulting, they can find me on my website, reach me through my website, katrinaprescott.com. And I'm not very active on social media, so I'll just leave it at that. Maybe one day I will be.
That's good. And would you like to share one fun tidbit about yourself before we conclude the episode today?
So a fun tidbit about myself. Well, I lived in New York for 10 years and it was intense. Um, and an experience that I'm grateful for. What's a fun tidbit about me? I don't think I have anything, Allison. Am I fun? A fun tidbit about me is that I can't think of a fun tidbit about me.
There, I love that actually. That is funny. You're great. You're so much fun. Um, how did you get into producing?
Long story short, I moved to New York and was young. I think I was 21 or something when I was over there. I was staying with a friend in New York, and a friend that they had in the building was a photographer, and he suggested that I work in production. What's production? I have no idea. He's like, I think you'd be good in that. So he got me in on the photo side, and that was it. That was the start, and I didn't stop. From there, I met other people and got more work, and someone said, "Oh, what do you want to do, TV, commercials or movies?" And I was like, "Well, what pays the most?" Commercials. That's what I want to do. So that's how I started, and I never stopped. I've changed what I do. But yeah, now I have a little show, as we mentioned, therapeutic fibbing. But that is how I got into it, and I'm very grateful for that career. It's given me a lot, and I also feel like being a producer. I know that being a producer really helped me navigate caregiving because in production, there's no. There's no. Have to make it happen. So even though I was getting no's from the system, I would just figure out how to kind of ask my question in another way. There's always a third option, right? Yes, no, and the third option. So I would always keep my eye on that if I didn't get a yes. And sometimes I couldn't get a win there, but a lot of the times I did. There's always a third way. And by advocating for that third way, it also plants the seed of the people in the system that maybe never would have thought of that as an option. Right. And that in some way is a form of advocacy. And maybe things change from that. Oh, we did this
Yes.
and it worked. So, for example, we did end up getting one repeat caregiver all the time. I ended up getting from the system, I think it was 37 or 38 hours of help per week.
Oh, yeah, that's better than your initial 6.
Yes, it took time, but I got that. And then I broke it out. So I had 5 hours, 5 days a week, something like that, just loosely. And then maybe a couple hours on the weekend so I could work, because how else could I work? And we had one caregiver that would do all of that. It became challenging if she called in sick or went on
Mhm.
vacation, but we eventually did find a backup. It wasn't easy. And those weeks that she was away were more challenging, but it became a very good experience for all of us. I think it was even good for the care provider because she was able to get into a routine for her work, and it probably felt stable. And she also probably felt like she was really making a contribution. There was no way that my mom could handle the revolving door of workers. It wasn't working. So that really, really helped us.
So transferable skills. You have transferable skills from producing to producing as a caregiver.
Yes. Yeah. But I do see how those skills really helped. If I hadn't been pushed the way that I had in producing, I don't know that we would have gotten those things. And these are also things that I teach people, or suggest, right? Because
Yeah, to persevere.
to persevere, and also keywords to use, strategies. I always said that the most exhausting part of caregiving was actually the mental work, right? The constant strategizing, the constant scheduling, the constant forward thinking. A person living with dementia, being in presence with that person is key. So it's an amazing presence practice. The other stuff around it really takes strategizing, depending on what a person's life is like too, right? Like, do I have to go to work? Does the person have to work? Or people have kids and a husband, and there's so many different things going on. So there's a lot of strategizing that can go into it. Oh, we're going here, my caree is having this test done, you know, they're going to be uncomfortable. We have to make sure they're relaxed. What meds are we giving for that? There's a lot of mental work. What time are we going to give these meds? Is the appointment going to be on time? Is it going to be an hour late and then the drugs wear off? I mean, it's thousands and thousands and
And then
thousands.
more bathroom trips. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
whole thing. So, there's a lot of logistics involved. And how do you get a free wheelchair? How do you get a rate reduction? How do you
Yeah.
get all
Yeah.
these
Oh,
things?
yeah. Those are really valuable insights to share.
Those are things. And then just little, so there's systemic system tips, and then there's in the moment, right? The conscious communication, the respond instead of react. There's a lot of opportunity, but these small shifts can really be a game changer for caregivers, care partners.
Thank you for sharing your non-tidbit. I think you've got a lot of fun things, a lot of fun tidbits. And if folks want to find out what more of your fun tidbits are, they can sign up for a caregiving consultant session with you. But Katrina, I want to thank you for joining me today. It has been awesome. And it's been such a good time to learn more about your caregiving story and what you are doing now to help caregivers not have to do what you had to do and start where you did.
Well, thank you for having me and providing a space for people to share information. I know it's a lot of work. As a producer, I know you put a lot of work into this. So thank you for doing your work as well.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Ciao for now.
As I said, Katrina is one busy gal. It's obvious how much she wants to set other caregivers up for success. even going to the deeper level of helping the health professionals by being a mentor and participating in research. What about her innovative idea of the project she helped bring to her own building called Close to Home? And the video series, Therapeutic Fibbing, which is definitely worth checking out. Katrina also stresses the importance of having your representation agreement in place. Now, these documents differ by name depending on where you live, but the message remains the same: to have the advanced care planning documentation in place so that you can be your loved one's voice when they no longer have capacity. I loved hearing about Hilarity for Charity and Katrina's suggestion to sign up for their newsletter and check out their granting program. And don't forget the brilliant resource we spoke about from who Katrina calls the dementia whisperer, Teepa Snow. If you want to connect with Katrina as a caregiver consultant, you can reach her through her website, katrinaprescott.com. And I invite you to tap into alongsidecaregiverconsulting.ca or Alongside Caregiver Consulting's Facebook page or Instagram account if you are in the midst of a caregiving journey and need some supports. And if you'd like to share your story as a guest on the Island Treasures podcast, please contact me by email, either through my website or at alongsidecaregiverconsulting@shaw.ca. And thank you for tuning in today, and to Katrina Prescott for sharing your caregiving story and your innovative ideas. If you don't want to miss future episodes, be sure to subscribe to the Island Treasures podcasts. See you next episode.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.